The morning light poured through the blinds like liquid confession, streaking across the table where Noah sat. Motionless, hollow, alert. The coffee was cold, untouched, its surface trembling with each pulse of his heartbeat. Elise had texted hours ago. Landed safe. Big day ahead. The lie was small, almost elegant, like a thread pulled from a perfect weave. But the envelope, thin white and unassuming, had arrived with the morning mail. Inside, the receipt gleamed with a cruel precision. The name of a hotel in Chicago, a room charged to Noah Raines, dates matching Elise's work trip. His fingers trembled, tracing the ink that had turned trust into evidence. The world shifted, silent and irreversible. The day bled into monotony. Noah drove aimlessly through the city, the hum of the tires filling the void. He didn't need to wonder anymore. Knowing was its own kind of paralysis. He passed familiar streets where Elise used to sing along with the radio, off-key but radiant. The ghost of that sound echoed faintly against the rain-streaked glass. He pulled over by the river and watched the current twist beneath the bridge, his reflection fractured by water. Betrayal didn't destroy him. It hollowed him out and left the shell standing. The house felt heavier at night, as if it too had learned the truth. Every framed photo became a silent witness, every echo a memory of laughter that no longer belonged. He stared at the folded receipt on the counter, illuminated by a single overhead bulb, its edges curling like a wound refusing to close. He opened her laptop without hesitation. Now. The glow of the screen painted him ghost pale, her words spilling across his reflection like acid. "See you at the hotel. One message read." The ache wasn't new. It was recognition. The slow realization that the end had already happened. He was only now catching up. When the rain came, Noah stepped outside barefoot. The cool drops hit his skin with quiet mercy. The porch creaked beneath him, and for a moment, the world was soundless, except for the rain. Inside, the receipt would dry by morning, but something in him never would. And still, somewhere between the thunder and silence, he began to breathe again. Morning came heavy and uninvited. Noah woke to a bed that smelled like absence. Elise's side was perfectly made, as if untouched by sleep or conscience. He told himself it couldn't be true. There must be a mistake, an explanation wrapped in the language of reason. He made coffee, stared into the steam, and pretended that the receipt wasn't real. The sound of boiling water filled the silence where her voice should have been. He checked his phone again, scrolling up through her old messages, the gentle ones, the ones before. Everything tilted. He wanted to believe in those words more than the truth. He called her at noon. She answered too quickly, her voice bright, almost rehearsed. "Hey, you," she said. "I'm just heading into a meeting." He laughed softly. Asked about her day, pretending not to hear the lie. Her pauses were longer now, her tone uneven in places. It used to be smooth. When the call ended, he stayed still. The phone pressed against his ear long after the line went silent, as if he could summon the version of her that once meant forever. Elise's flight was due back the next day. Noah rehearsed their reunion in his head. He'd ask, gently, almost kindly, and she'd explain everything. It would all make sense. That night he cleaned the house, folded her favorite blanket, even placed a candle on the table. Hope, he realized, was its own form of denial. A softer lie, easier to live with. She returned home late. The door creaked open and Noah pretended to be asleep on the couch. He heard her steps, the rustle of fabric, the faint clink of her suitcase against the floor. Her perfume filled the room, a scent he once loved, now a quiet accusation. She stood there, watching him pretend. Neither of them said a word. The silence between them was too careful, too practiced. The next morning she moved through the kitchen like a guest. Quiet, polite, smiling too much. Noah watched her pour coffee into his mug instead of her own. She said softly, and he wanted to believe her. The lie had become their shared language, the one they both spoke fluently now. He smiled back. not to forgive her, but to hold the last fragments of before. It began with the quiet kind of courage, the kind that comes from sleepless nights and too much thinking. Noah watched Elise move through the kitchen like routine itself. Her laughter sounded rehearsed, her touches mechanical. When she leaned against the counter, scrolling through her phone, something in him broke. Clean and silent, he reached into his pocket, unfolded the receipt, and placed it on the counter between them. The sound of paper meeting granite was the loudest thing in the room. She froze, eyes flicking down. The world narrowed to that small square of proof. Elise stared at the receipt, lips parting without sound. Her phone slipped from her hand, clattering against the tile. "It's not what you think," she whispered, but her voice faltered before reaching conviction. Noah didn't shout. He just stood there, looking at her as if she were someone else entirely. And maybe she was. The silence between them expanded, swallowing the walls, the air, the years they'd built. When the tears finally came, they weren't loud. They were almost graceful, falling in time with her whispered confession. Names, places, moments, all poured out, the truth spilling across the counter like red wine. Noah listened, his hands trembling, not from rage but from the release of knowing. Betrayal, he realized, wasn't an explosion, it was erosion. It hollowed from the inside, slowly, quietly, until the foundation gave way. Noah didn't remember sitting down, only the sound of his breath echoing in the stillness. Elise knelt beside him, trying to touch his hand, but he pulled away. "I just wanted to feel something again," she said. The words were small, broken things, but they landed like stones. He looked at her, really looked, and saw not the woman he'd loved, but the woman she'd become without him noticing. And for the first time, he didn't want to fix it. When it was over, neither of them said goodbye. Elise packed quietly, her movements delicate, almost reverent. Noah watched from the doorway. No anger left, only exhaustion. Outside, the street shimmered after rain. She turned once before leaving, a glance that held everything they'd lost and nothing they could reclaim. The door closed with the weight of finality. Noah exhaled, and the silence felt clean for the first time in years. Days turned into a quiet kind of blur. The house no longer smelled like her perfume, just soap and air. Noah moved through rooms like a stranger, every sound exaggerated in her absence. The bed felt bigger, colder. He kept catching himself waiting for footsteps, laughter, the hum of a hair dryer. Nothing came. The world didn't collapse. It simply went still. He began to notice small things again. The hum of the refrigerator, the way morning light changed color across the walls. Grief wasn't loud anymore. It was a slow echo, reshaping the silence she left behind. He started walking every evening. The path by the river became a quiet confessional. Each step, an unspoken thought. Sometimes he'd imagine Elise beside him, the ghost of her laughter folding into the sound of wind against the water. He didn't cry anymore. He just walked until the city lights blurred into stars. Healing, he realized, wasn't about forgetting. It was learning how to keep living with what could never be undone. At the cafe downtown, the barista learned his name. She asked, "The usual," and smiled the way people do when they notice you've been coming alone for a while. Her name was Claire. She spoke softly, listened intently, never pried. Noah found comfort in her small kindnesses, the warmth of the cup in his hands, the way her laughter filled the hollow space without asking for anything in return. For the first time, he stayed for a second coffee. He started to sleep again. Dreams returned, small and strange, no longer haunted by her, but by forgotten versions of himself. One night, he dreamt of standing in the rain, only this time he wasn't cold. The next morning, he stood before the mirror, tracing the lines beneath his eyes. He didn't look broken anymore. Just older, human changed. Sometimes survival was the only proof of strength. Weeks later, Noah drove past the hotel by accident. The same name glowed on its sign, indifferent and ordinary. He didn't stop. Instead, he turned onto a side road, rolled down the windows, and let the wind fill the car. The receipt was gone, the hurt dulled, and what remained was space, wide, unclaimed, alive. For the first time, he smiled without remembering her. The world was moving again, and so was he. Noah began to notice beauty in small, inconvenient moments, the way sunlight caught on a cracked window, how the wind bent the trees near the river. The grief had changed shape. It no longer stung. It simply existed, like an old scar that ached when it rained. He didn't run from it anymore. Instead, he let it sit beside him, a quiet companion reminding him of what it meant to feel deeply, to lose, and still breathe. Sometimes, he caught his reflection and didn't look away. He went back to the river, the same place where he'd once sat with the receipt in his hand, trembling. The water was higher now, moving faster. He threw a small stone into the current and watched it vanish beneath the ripples. There was no ceremony, no catharsis, just movement, just letting go. Claire called one evening and asked if he'd like to join her for dinner. He hesitated, not because of fear, but because he realized he no longer carried the weight of comparison. When she smiled across the table later that night, he didn't see Elise's absence. He saw his own presence. It wasn't love yet, but it was life. And that was enough. Later that week, he opened the old photo album, the one Elise had made years ago. He didn't feel anger this time, only gratitude for what was real while it lasted. Every smile had once been honest. Every embrace had once meant something. He closed the album gently, placed it back on the shelf, and felt the subtle click of closure. Unforced, complete. In the weeks that followed, Noah stopped marking days by what he had lost and began living in what remained. Mornings brought quiet promise, evenings a calm he'd never known before. Sometimes he still thought of Elise, but without bitterness, only the faint recognition of a chapter that shaped him. Standing before the mirror one morning, he whispered, "Thank you. It wasn't for her. It was for himself." Spring arrived like an unspoken apology from the world. The trees along the boulevard bloomed in wild defiance, petals scattering across windshields and sidewalks, as if the earth were celebrating survival itself. Noah had started taking photographs again, something he hadn't done in years. Each frame felt like a promise to pay attention. In capturing moments, he began to remember what it felt like to belong to them. The loneliness had softened. It no longer clawed. It simply breathed beside him. He began meeting Claire more often, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just to walk. There was no rush, no expectation. Their conversations drifted from books to music, to the strange beauty of ordinary days. One afternoon, she told him that healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about building something new with what remains. Her words stayed with him long after she left, echoing softly like a truth he had always known but never spoken. That evening, Noah sat at his desk and opened a blank notebook. He began to write, not to Elise, but to himself. Words spilled without structure or intention, each line a reflection of how far he'd come. He wrote of pain, of stillness, of the small mercies that had carried him through. By the time he set the pen down, the page looked like a confession and a prayer combined. A letter arrived unexpectedly, Elia's handwriting. She wrote that she was sorry, that she hoped he'd found peace. Noah read it once, twice, then folded it neatly and placed it inside the old photo album. There was no anger left, only a gentle acceptance. Some stories end not with forgiveness, but with release. On a quiet Sunday, Noah and Claire drove to the coast. The ocean stretched before them, vast, alive, endless. They walked barefoot along the shore, the cold waves brushing their feet. Noah turned to her, smiled, and realized that love could exist again, not as replacement, but as renewal. The sea roared behind them, erasing their footprints before the next wave came. Some beginnings, he thought. Don't ask for permission. They simply arrive. The seasons folded quietly into one another. Noah's life no longer felt like something to survive, but something to live. He found comfort in small rituals. Watering plants, walking to the corner cafe, calling his sister on Sundays. The noise in his mind had softened into melody. He didn't chase closure anymore. It had found him on its own. Some wounds, he realized, don't disappear. They become part of the map that guides you home. Claire had begun to feel like sunlight itself, constant, gentle, and unassuming. They didn't speak about what came before. They simply existed in what was. One evening, as they cooked together, she laughed at something trivial, and Noah found himself laughing too. Loud, unrestrained, free. It startled him. How good it felt to sound alive again. Weeks later, he visited his childhood home. The garden was overgrown, the paint fading, yet it welcomed him like time had waited patiently. He walked through each room, touching the walls, the banister, the doorknobs that remembered him. For the first time, he saw his life as a collection of chapters, not failures. Every ending, every fracture, had led him here, to a life he finally wanted to stay inside. That evening, Noah stood on the balcony with Claire beside him, the city below pulsing with life. He took her hand, not to hold on, but to share the view. "Do you ever think we survive things just to become better at loving?" he asked quietly. She leaned against his shoulder, eyes closing. "No," she said. "We survived to learn that love was never gone. It was just waiting for us to be ready again." The next morning, Noah drove alone to the ocean. He parked near the cliffs, the same stretch of coast where he and Elise had once stood years ago. The sea was endless, unchanging, forgiving. He took a deep breath, letting the salt air fill his lungs. In his pocket, the old receipt remained. A folded ghost of another life. He pulled it out, tore it once, and let the pieces scatter into the wind. The paper caught the air, lifting higher until it vanished. Noah smiled, stepped closer to the edge, and whispered, "Thank you for letting me go."